Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. My name is Joe Lurie. I am on a team called the uh, Customer Experience Engineering Team, a part of Intune Product Group. And I'm here today with three people that are working for the teams that are building mobile application management for Windows. We're joking a little bit because some of our docs pages say mobile application management on Windows, some say mobile application management for Windows. Either way, we're talking about mobile application management, app protection policies on Windows. And before we get started answering your questions, I'd love to hear from the team that I have here. So I'm going to go, I see clockwise, I see Jana, Arunesh, and Daniel. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, what you're working on with MAM for Windows, and we'll start answering some questions.
Sure, I can kick off the introduction. So, hey folks, my name is Jana Veloshina. I'm a product manager on Microsoft Entra. Within the MAM for Windows space, I'm here specifically on the conditional access side of the house, because we want to make sure that we help everybody set up their CA policies correctly for MAM for Windows.
Cool. Arunesh?
Hey guys, my name is Arunesh Chandra, and I lead the product team for Edge for Business. So this team owns all the commercial-focused features in the browser, and one of our key investment is MAM for Windows that we are very excited to talk to you about today and hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Arunesh. Daniel?
Awesome. I'll wrap us up. So my name is Daniel Emerson. I'm a product manager on the Intune team. I've had the opportunity to work on our MAM investments since we started them at Microsoft, first with iOS and then adding on Android. And then a couple of years ago, we added on Windows. So it's been very exciting to watch it grow over time and get these deep conversations with many customers, and hoping to have some of those today with you guys.
Great, thanks. And I do see some questions starting to come in, but before we get to those, you mentioned, Daniel, that you've been on the MAM team since iOS and then Android and now Windows. And part of my role at Microsoft is I'm very customer focused. So I talk to a lot of customers. We've been talking about MAM for Windows, and so inevitably the question always comes up: how about MAM for Mac OS? How about MAM? It's using Edge browser. So if I have Edge browser on Mac OS, what do we think about if that's how are we investigating that? What do we think about MAM for future platforms as well?
Sure. Yeah, we recognize that Edge is the entry point for many end users to connect to org resources. So I think our long-term vision is to make that a pervasive entry point that has the protections that are offered by MAM, by conditional access. Right now, I would characterize Mac OS support as something we're investigating. And so stay tuned to the roadmaps over time, and hopefully we can get there at some point in the future.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And that roadmap, or let me just say, if you want to give that feedback, because again, I talk to customers, so I'm able to give their feedback. But for all of you that are watching this, aka.ms/Intune feedback, give us that feedback. The more feedback that we get, the more evidence that we collect. It helps us prioritize some of the asks from our customers. Arunesh, I see you nodding your head as well. Did you want to add on to that, or?
Yeah, I think that the Dell explained it pretty well. The intention here is to be very pervasive. Edge is supported on all types of devices, all platforms, and building this capability across the board is the vision. The thing that we have built with Windows is so seamless because of our deep expertise across the platform on Windows and the Entra connections. What we are investigating is how can we do similar seamless experience on Mac OS, which is, as you can imagine, not very trivial, because we rely on Windows components for device posture and all that. And the seamless and frictionless experience that we have built for Windows is a little challenging on on Mac, and that is our kind of deep journey in investigating, figure out what to do.
All right, thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Again, that's a question that I do hear a lot, so I know a lot of our viewers are thinking that as well. I'm going to start reading off some of the questions. So, Aranesh, I think I'm going to bring this one to you first. We have a question about really what MAM for Windows is, I think. So we want to allow syncing of edge settings on corporate Windows devices, but block it on personal Windows devices. Is this possible with Windows for MAM?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we've heard about this question for some time now. In the past, there was some ways that we had recommended of disabling Windows Sync on personal devices through some hacky way. There was not an official way. There was a service in Edge that was responsible for syncing, and if you put that service behind conditional access, and that would kind of block sync on personal devices. But that particular workaround has stopped working. So we are actively investigating on how to create edge policy to block syncing on unmanaged devices. And as you can imagine, sync is kind of goes across enterprise tenant boundaries and stuff. So we are on early investigation at the moment. So I will kind of stay tuned on that as well as we kind of build out and plan and share with you guys.
Thanks, Aranesh. We got a question from Lewis on Tech Community. This is actually Android related, so I'm going to bring this down to Daniel, since you mentioned you've been with the MAM team since MAM on iOS and then Android. So is it possible to have an automatic per app Microsoft tunnel initiated with only MAM devices? Last time I checked, or last time Lewis checked, this was not possible. Is that something that we can do with Android?
That's definitely something I'd have to look into a little bit more. I know we have that support on iOS today. I believe we support it with enrollment on Android as well. I'd have to double check with the team to see where we are in doing it in a MAM only style configuration.
Do you know, and I'm going to ask you this, Daniel, kind of as a follow-up for Lewis, is the MAM, the tunnel for MAM that's part of Intune P2, would that satisfy something like what he's looking at?
It is in fact the same technology, the tunnel capability. The question, as I understood it from the chat here, is really just trying to see if that's available without enrollment.
Okay.
And definitely there's some, capabilities that we've looked at there. We've also looked at kind of what the market is and where customers are asking for capability. While there certainly are scenarios where customers are looking for it on unenrolled devices, I think typically we see this tied more closely to that enrolled device scenario.
All right, great. Thanks so much. We have a question that's coming to us from X. How do we make it so users can only access docs and files via Intune MAM Edge? I'm going to actually reword that. How do we make it so users can only access docs and files via MAM for Windows and Intune?
Well, I can kick that off, but I think Zana will be the
I was just going to say,
here,
Daniel,
right?
why don't you start? And I think Zana can help us with that as well.
And we cover this in some of our Getting Started guides as well. So that if you haven't seen the Getting Started with Microsoft Edge, one of our colleagues, Santos, helped author that content. It really helps you step through best practices for deploying this in your environment. And one of the very first steps is to enable conditional access to accomplish this scenario. So I'll kick it over to you, Zana, and you can cover that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, as Daniel mentioned, a really great resource is that Getting Started, which hopefully maybe as a follow-up we can get it posted to you folks. But in conditional access, we have one key piece that really needs to be set up for the whole process is the require app protection policy. So when you go set up conditional access policies and then you set up MAM on Windows on Intune, you want to make sure that conditional access has that policy set up. So then that can be like essentially the check when a user is trying to sign in, that's going to check the resource or check the conditions for Windows MAM, and then basically kick it off into the rest of the sign-in process.
Actually, what I would like to add is that this scenario is the key MAM for Edge scenario in Edge, where you deploy app protection policies with conditional access, and the browser then takes over to provide additional DLP controls over those, and then kind of that creates a secure bubble for your corporate access. So this is the key scenario, and as Daniel and Zana already mentioned, that the Getting Started guide that Santos has written up is a good way to start.
I think that Getting Started guide can be linked from the homepage or on our docs page. So that would be aka.ms/MAM on Windows. And if that's my bad that it's MAM on Windows, not MAM for Windows. But that is the URL, and we'll have that right down here in a second. But aka.ms/MAM on Windows won't bring you right to the Get Started page, but it links off of that page. So we're talking about conditional access, Jana, and getting those devices that are using MAM and making sure they can go through conditional access and whatnot. But one of the other things we do with conditional access is we make sure that device is compliant or not compliant. We allow them access or don't allow them access accordingly. How do you monitor the non-compliant devices? We got this question that came in from X as well. How do we monitor for non-compliant devices?
So that's one I may have to check with go back with the team on, since we're really focusing on Windows MAM and the app protection policy piece. But there is a setting in conditional access that is also require compliant device that is important to turn on in conjunction with the require app protection policy. So then that will make sure that we can check for the app protection policy as well as check if the device meets those requirements.
All right,
yeah,
great.
I can maybe add on a little bit more there as well, in that in the app space, compliance is really around alignment with our posture checking or our health checks. And so it's a little bit different than the device compliance state because by virtue of deploying the policy, we can ensure that it's either in the correct state or the action that you've specified if that health check field has occurred. Generally, for most of our health checks, we offer a warn option, which is more educational to the end user to say, hey, maybe we're going to be rolling out a new minimum OS version for your mobile device. And so you might want to think about upgrading if your manufacturer allows you to. Blocking, which is typically a more serious situation where you can't get access to that org account and resources until you've rectified whatever the health check failure is, or in the most serious case, actually wiping that account and the local org data from that device. And that would be, if there's some serious tampering that's occurred, or there's a security risk maybe on a certain app version or OS version, you want to make sure that isn't active in your environment. So while there is good alignment between the different requirements that you can enable with CA, from the apps MAM space, it's really the require app protection policy is the one that we use.
All right, thanks for that clarification there as well. We got this question from tech community as well. I'm not sure it's a MAM question, but we'll read it out and see. I think, Daniel, I'm going to run to you first on this one. From a scenario where we would like to block access from all bring your own devices, Windows, Mac, Linux, do you have any resources where we can read up on what is required to get us started for this route? Again, that route being blocking access. Can we do a selective wipe like on mobile devices? And you kind of just started referencing that, where you could do maybe a conditional access and then selective wipe. But how about for MAM for Windows?
Yeah, so kind of two lines of response there. So one is that CA using the device compliance could potentially be used to block personal devices. It depends on your scenario, right? If you only support maybe fully managed devices with the various platform capabilities for fully managed devices, that could be a tool. Depending on your scenario, there may be others. So definitely something we could maybe follow up on and dig in deeper. For the removing, I'll generalize it to removing org data. And the MAM space, selective wipe is the technique that we use, and that's supported on Windows as well. And that removes both the account from the app as well as any data associated with that account in that application. There are various techniques for managed devices as well, whether you factory reset the device or just remove a management profile. It kind of depends on your configuration, but we do support the ability to remove your footprint, if you will, on the device in both the app and device management spaces.
So a couple things I wanted to respond there was obviously we support the wipe scenario on Windows as well, but the MAM for Windows feature is about enabling BYO device, not blocking. So I think if you don't enable it, you are blocked in some way. So that was kind of a slight, if there's an explanation, we'll love to expand on that.
And I think Jana could probably, that's really what conditional access does as well, right? We can block from personal devices. One of the policies in conditional access, it has to be a managed device, right? So if you want to take a little bit of that answer as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's the two big pieces of conditional access, which is the blocking, which we're talking about, and also the granting for like granting access for the resource. So you can really target, both sides of the coin there with conditional access policies, where if you're looking to block, you can do so. But also, if you're looking to specifically allow access for certain types of devices or certain types of conditions there, then you can do so as well.
Great, thanks. We have a question that came from tech community that it's not really on MAM for Windows. It's more of a MAM question. So there's a couple of things. I'm going to answer a little bit, and then I'm going to pass it over to Daniel. But the question on tech community, can we have multiple MAM policies from different orgs for any of the Microsoft apps on iOS or Android? And I look at that as a scenario that comes to me all the time is I have a consultant that has his own device, enrolled in his own Intune tenant, but then he's doing a job for a company, and so now all of a sudden he's trying to check his email on his managed device from another tenant. So we have multiple MAM policies. There is something that we have posted on our roadmap page, so aka.ms M365 roadmap, where we call that multi-identity MAM, I believe is the way we word it on the roadmap page. Daniel, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, we've had different names for this feature over the years: multi-identity, multiple managed accounts, the contractor scenario. All of them come back to the same situation, where, as you described, Joe, the device may be managed by one organization and you want to add another account from a different organization. That's probably the most common one. It comes up a little bit in, say, a mergers and acquisitions scenario as well, where again, maybe one organization is already present on the device and they want to get that user up and running quickly with a new organization. We've seen it somewhat in disaster recovery scenarios as well, where something's happened with your employer's organization and they want you to be able to grab any device and kind of quickly get up and running for a short-term basis. And that may involve getting access from maybe a family member's device that maybe have management from a different organization as well. So yeah, I think you've hit the story on mobile. We are definitely in development on that across Microsoft, both within the Intune team as well as with partner app teams within the company. I think we'll see some previews on that later this year, but stay tuned to that roadmap for the latest updates. For the Windows MAMP space, which is kind of where we're focusing today, we're also investigating this primarily for that contractor scenario, right? And really trying, or consultant or contractor scenario, so that you could potentially in the future be able to connect on a device that's managed by one organization with a MAM account from a different organization, or potentially more than one additional organization. So that's one we're definitely anxious to hear feedback on, kind of better understand what your scenarios are, and then, as kind of things proceed, if we have any kind of investigations to share, we can certainly add that to the roadmap as well.
Thanks. And again, that was two links I'm going to give you again, aka.ms/Intune feedback, and that roadmap, aka.ms M365 roadmap. Thanks so much for that. And we have probably enough time for a couple more questions. This one question just came in, and this is one of my favorite questions that I get all the time from tech community. When will we be able to use MAM to manage other than Edge on Windows? And if you've got a list that you can share, what are some of the apps that you're looking at?
Sure thing. Yeah, that's we've got a different approach that we've taken on Windows or desktop platforms. If we wanted to, imagine that maybe Mac OS was in there in the future, and primarily because of the platform architectures. On mobile platforms, there's a very well-defined app model with very well-defined interactions between apps and between the application and the operating system. On Windows, and other desktop platforms, the flexibility of those platforms makes it harder to have that well-defined boundary between apps, or between the app and the system. And so that definitely provides some challenges in terms of us being able to secure and manage that data without, at the app layer, without having a broader set of management controls to lock down that entire device. And so because of some of those reasons, we are looking to have a smaller set of apps that we support on those desktop platforms, but really being intentional about which apps have very broad access to org resources. And that's one of the reasons that the partnership within this group made so much sense to start with, because Edge has access to, Microsoft SaaS apps, third-party SaaS apps, internet, many resources that an end user may need to access within their organization. So that said, I wouldn't anticipate a long list of future apps. We do have, at least one that's in the works, and we're not ready to kind of disclose that one yet, but we'll definitely add that to the roadmap as soon as we can disclose it. But again, the theme there is really trying to provide broad access to org resources and make sure it's complementary to the support that we already have with Edge today.
And I want to go a little bit further. When I read that question, I'm pretty sure he's asking, or the poster, I didn't see who posted it, is asking probably specifically about M365, Microsoft 365 apps, which we do support through Edge, right? So exactly. we would support those through Edge, just not the desktop versions of those apps.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to raise, Joe, and that, there's definitely some perception, I think, out there that, the web apps are in some way less capable than their fully native equivalents, and that's really changed over over time. I think for what we've seen is a clear trend with the average end user, the average kind of information worker, that the web apps are fully capable of having rich and interactive, not only just read a document on the weekend, but to be able to fully create and edit within those web experiences. So if that is the app of concern, just give it a try. I think you'll be surprised at how capable it is today.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to add here is that, as Daniel mentioned, the web app ecosystem is kind of continuing to become strong, as evidenced by continued cloud migration and rise of enterprise SaaS adoption. And browser is actually becoming the next endpoint in its own right. And there are, Windows telemetry and other third-party industry research that are suggesting that the amount of time spent inside a browser is just on the rise. And in some cases, there are some verticals where we see upwards of 75% of time being used inside the browser. So, protecting your assets or your access to corporations through the browser certainly is the high value investment here.
Yep. Thanks so much. And thank you, team. I'm going to ask you all to give like 1 minute of any final thoughts. And again, we're just going to go clockwise from the way I see it. So I see Jana, Daniel, Aranesh. So any last thoughts, anything you want to let our viewers know?
Sure. I mean, yeah, last thoughts from me is conditional access. The app protection policy piece is super important when you're configuring Windows MAM. You want to make sure that in conditional access, you can go through and do the grant access control for app protection, and also reference our, getting started walkthrough links there, because that'll really help you set everything up correctly.
Thanks so much. Daniel?
I guess I'd say it in one line, and that it's feedback, right? We're building new capabilities in this feature area based on your feedback. So if you see something that you need that isn't there, reach out to us and let us know.
AKA .ms, Intune feedback. We've posted that a lot. It's true. This is our main way of getting that information from you all. So thank you so much for all the feedback that you've given, and please continue to give that feedback. Aranesh?
I will plus one on that. That was going to be my line as well. That we're very proud of the thing that we have built here, and it is certainly going to be useful to offer you more flexibility in your org, more satisfaction with your employees, and we love for you to try it out and give us feedback and help us evolve this tech for to help you help your employees.
Thanks so much. For everyone that's watching this on demand, our questions and answers comment section on Tech Community will be open through Friday of this week. I don't know the date offhand, but it'll be open for the next couple of days. So make sure if you're watching this after, when it's no longer live, you can still post those questions. We still want to get those questions from you, and we will still answer those questions. Please stay tuned for the next session, which is Effective Prompt Engineering for IT Pros. This is with Zach and Carlos and Ancor. They're going to talk about like tips and tricks for that guided prompt experience in Copilot in Intune. So this is definitely a must-see, as what they say, must-see TV. I think I'm going to get sued for saying that. But it's definitely a must-see session. So again, Effective Prompt Engineering for IT Pros. Make sure you check in for that one right after this. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.